Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show with your host, Mark Walllace, here on intellectualradio.com, iHeartRadio, Facebook, and YouTube. I'd like to ask you to go to my YouTube page at Mark J. Walllace and like and share the program. Please also subscribe there. There is no cost for you to subscribe to the People Show. All we want to do is to increase our audience, obviously, and have a more stronger audience participation. And of course, this is our second week of Black History Month as we honor those who have made great contributions to the country as well as to the world. But we're also going to be talking about making new history, and that is continuing the work that those who have come before us have done, and they paved the way for you and I to do exactly what we are doing right now. And we're going to be talking about something that is extraordinarily important, that you will be able to be a difference maker in, and we can make history right here in Illinois. And we are going to talk about that tonight. Joining me for tonight's program is my friend and sometimes co-host who comes on to be with me. I always enjoy having a conversation with him. He was the alderman of the 8th Ward, and he also serves as the Cook County Board President here in Cook County. And he and I have always shared lots of conversations about that, and I certainly never had the opportunity to meet his father, but certainly had the opportunity to witness some of the work. And as I say, he was one of the most important, influential Black political figures here in Chicago and in Cook County, and that is, of course, John Stroger, who served as the Cook County Board President. There are some who said that he should have been the Cook County Board President a lot sooner. So I'm bringing him on to the program. Todd Stroger, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Buenas noches for our people, friends from Puerto Rico.
Absolutely. Yeah, from our neighbors and from those who are a part of the Americas.
That's right. You know, Mark, I'm surprised to hear that you never met my father, because I thought any Black person who was actually doing something had run into him at some point.
Yeah.
He seemed to know everything.
You know, I happened to I didn't officially meet him, but I certainly ran into him. I remember running into the very first time that I actually had a physical, I guess if you want to call it, in proximity. He was getting his shoes shined at the shoe shine at the county building.
Oh, yeah, that was a very first time into him. Yeah.
That I saw him, and did not have the opportunity to actually meet him. Just as well, I didn't have the opportunity to meet Harold Washington. I saw him once in person, but Harold Washington was the political figure. He was the political figure. I knew nothing about Harold Washington. I knew nothing about Chicago politics when I moved here, November the 18th of 1985. And I was coming here for a job at the time. And because I had arrived late, or later than I was supposed to, I ended up having to stay at this motel up on Bryn Mawr in Clark Street temporarily. And every time that I would go home from the job, turn on the television, and the news would be on. And of course, headlining the news were lawsuits that were lodged between Ed Verdoliak and Ed Burke against Mayor Sawyer. But what impressed me was that in every one of those decisions, or those lawsuits that they lodged against Harold Washington came out victorious in every one of those decisions. I don't remember him losing a decision of anything that they brought against him. And at that time, I said, boy, I need to pay attention to who this guy is. And of course, you know, as time would move on, I would learn more and find out more about what was going on. People would be talking about Harold Washington everywhere.
Yeah.
In every space where there were Black people, certainly, Harold Washington was something of the topic of conversation. So, of course, he literally, and I say this, that he catapulted my whole framework and thought about the importance of being engaged in the political process. So Harold Washington was that figure for me. I never had the opportunity to meet him. He came by my church once when I was a member of the Union Missionary Baptist Church at 940 North Orleans. He came by there once doing a political campaign stop, but I never got the opportunity to meet him. But he was one of those figures that made you feel like you had a friend on the 5th floor, whether you met him or not. You felt like you knew him during that time. Your father had that same type of impact, because he came across as like your dad, right? Like your father, not just some, you know, highfalutin political figure. He was somebody that you could identify and relate to. So those two personalities were very impactful, and people that I remember and try to model my public service after. While I've never served in public office, but serving as an advocate, I try to model myself after two people that I have a lot of respect for, and your father was one of those, and Harold Washington certainly was the other.
Well, as John Stroger's son and watching, I always felt like he acted like he was everybody's Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe was my favorite uncle. But Harold Washington, when I was in college when Harold Washington died, and people came up to me and were like, you know, you have my condolences, like it was my father who had died. He had that kind of aura throughout the nation, because these people weren't even from Chicago. They were just like, your mayor died. He was a good man. We were watching him.
Yeah, well, he certainly resonated all across the world, for that matter. And certainly by the time that he passed, which was in November 25th of 1987, by the time that he had passed, which was the day before Thanksgiving, and that just completely devastated my entire life at that time, that he had resonated all across the world. My family would ask about him down in Miami. Now, I moved here in 1985. So prior to that, we had not heard about the big campaign that was going on when he was elected in 1983. It was probably made the news, but we didn't really pay attention to it a lot down on the East Coast. But by 1987, Harold Washington was ingrained in just about every sector of the country, certainly of in large respect in some other places of the world.
Well, he had such a dynamic personality, and that fight with, you know, Burke and Verdoliak, it was such a upfront. They both were very skilled at speaking and being someone that you were like, maybe they're right type of figure. That it just caught the whole nation's. And you know, the mayor of Chicago generally didn't get beat up on like he did. So that was another thing that caught people's attention.
Right. I don't think that they've had those kind of council wars prior to Mayor Washington's tenure as mayor. I don't think that existed.
It didn't exist. I can tell you, well, it certainly didn't exist with Mayor Daley, Richard J. and I think he was there 21 years. It didn't happen under Blandick, and it didn't happen under Jane Byrne. I didn't really know her like that. Mm-hmm. Jane Byrne. It didn't happen under her either. So, yes, this was uncharted territory.
Well, Harold Washington was not supposed to be the mayor of the city of Chicago, and he certainly was not supposed to have the kind of impact that he ultimately had. And someone who clinically approached the political process, and who clearly, when that time happened, whose time had come, he was prepared to navigate through that process and through that system. And many of the personalities like Ed Burke and Ed Verdoliak, those people who wielded a lot of influence and favor during that time, just could not see it. Now, Ed Burke, Harold Washington saw as a person who was just hungry for power. But he saw, Ed Verdoliak, but Ed Burke, Harold Washington saw him as a racist. In fact, he called him a racist, said he was a racist from hip to hip. That's what he called him. And I watched that in an interview that he had done. I have so many different clips on Harold Washington, but so I am very fortunate to have come to Chicago at the time that I was planted here. I believe that God moved at such time to plant me here at the time that I did, because I did not have the kind of, even though my mother and my aunt took me to every community meeting, the community that I grew up in, anything that had to do with the political process, they dragged us along. But I did not have the interest in the political process. I did not have the interest in the political process all the way through high school, all the way through college, all the way through law school, until I came to Chicago and ran into the personality of Harold Washington. So he certainly awakened me to the importance of being engaged in the process. And I'll never, ever forget him for that, not being able or having to have met that person.
That's interesting. I've been in politics forever, because my dad, when I was born, he was a precinct captain, and let's see, maybe 5 years later, he was a committeeman. And then 2 years later after that, he was a commissioner. So I literally have been going to the county building 36 years before I even became the president. So I was not someone who thought that I wanted to be involved in this kind of stuff. But when I got back from school, I had a different feel, because I could really see how what my father was doing was affecting people's lives. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. So I was like, I'm going to be with him. I could have gone to a banker, and a banker said, I can get you into our program, and you can go to one of the best MBA schools in the nation. And I thought about it, and I said, no, I think I'd rather stay here and work with my dad. So that's what I did.
Yeah, well, I had great ambitions to be a very wealthy business person, and that was what my motivation was going through college, and that has not changed. However, it has been expanded that building wealth is a tool to being in a position to be able to do something to impact the lives of many others. And so yes, my business has allowed for me to be in the position to be an advocate for equity and for justice and for impacting public policy that will improve the lives of people whom I will never meet. There's nothing more gratifying than being able to be a part of something, doing something that that is going to, in some way, small, medium, or large, positively impact the lives of other people. There's nothing more gratifying than being in that position.
I think you need to tell the right that. The right's cry is empathy is a bad thing, which is really incredible since so many of them think themselves as Christians. But empathy is the what they want to take and say, no, don't be empathetic. Don't try to put yourself in these person's shoes. Let them help themselves. I want more. And that's the world we're in right now.
That is the world that we're in. But I believe that they are feeling it now. That, of course, I don't watch the NFL. I haven't watched the NFL since 2016, since they decided that they were going to take away the ability for Colin Kaepernick to play what he has worked so hard to do, to play in that sport, because he decided to use his platform to bring some awareness to an injustice that was and is happening. And so the 32 owners of the NFL decided that they were not going to allow for him, and capitulated at the time to the current president, that they were not going to allow for him to ever suit up and play football on the 32 fields of the NFL again. And that, to me, was a signal to every other Black person within the NFL that if you don't get in line, what happened to him will happen to you. Now, 80% of the NFL is made up of young Black men, and it's only my desire that those young Black men, if they could understand the gravity of the power that they willed, that if they decided collectively that they were not going to suit up, they were not going to take the field, the NFL would actually collapse without having the Black players. Now, they would probably go on, but they would never have the kind of market share, nor would they have the type of competitiveness that they would have without the Black players in the NFL. Not to completely abandon it, but to send a message to the owners that you have a responsibility, and we have power that will impact your market share and your shareholders if you are not willing to behave differently. Unfortunately, most of those guys are of the age of 19 and 20 and 21 and 22, and they're just not developed socially to have that type of awareness to do that sort of thing.
They sociologists say that males mature around 25. So yeah, they haven't seen anything, haven't really done anything yet. They're just trying to get something. They don't know how to run their business yet, because they're each one of those guys is their own business that brings in a lot of money and employs a lot of other people and pays good money to them too.
Well, without question. It's very complex, and I certainly understand it, but there's a part of me that wish that they would recognize the type of power that they actually wield if they used it together. They could bring the 32 white owners actually and bring them to their heels, because the one thing that you the way to impact these billionaires is to hurt their market share. And when their market share starts to tank, they are going to take a different approach. All we have to do is look back and see what happened when Disney decided that it was going to capitulate to Trump and fire Jimmy Kimmel. And when millions and millions of people decided that they were going to cancel their subscriptions to Disney, and they lost more than $7 billion in less than 48 hours, there was a complete reversal of that decision. So that's the power that we have. That's the same thing that I hope that will go viral. I canceled all of my Amazon accounts, my Amazon Prime, all of my Amazon apps I've gotten completely rid of. I spend probably somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 a year just buying construction supplies or improvement supplies from Amazon. I will not spend another dollar with Amazon based on what Jeff Bezos has now become. This was a person who was someone who stood up to Trump, that's now become a borderline sycophant to Donald Trump. So
well, it's part of the oligarchy. If you can become in the circle of those rich people who can pretty much do what they want, then that's what they've decided that they were going to do. I mean, all those the Amazon, the Apples, and those other billionaires you saw standing next to Donald Trump and saying, "Oh, you're the greatest! You're the greatest!" We are truly heading into, at least for this administration, to being an oligarchy like Russia. You know, the rich people help the president, and the president trying to take over the elections. Man, how many countries have we seen where there's a president and they say, "Okay, we're going to have an election," and then after the day is over, I won. We don't want the feds running our elections. That's crazy. I went off and veered. Sorry about that.
No. But it's all, it's all inextricably tied together to that. We must understand what these dynamics are, and we must understand what this effort is. This is an effort by someone who has no moral compass whatsoever, someone who is aggrieved at something, someone who is obsessed with Barack Obama and the success of Barack Obama, and who absolutely can't sleep at night because Barack Obama is revered and respected across the country and across the world, and Donald Trump is not.
Is not. No.
He is, and he thinks that he is respected by using his brute strength as he tries to exact his power. But
he's the bully. He's the bully who can't get anybody to love him, but he said, "You may not love me, but you'll fear me and do what I say because I can beat you up."
Right. So he doesn't have any desire to do good for anyone other than himself. And I believe that includes his family members, only his family members, as long as they agree to capitulate to his will. If any of them decided to go against him, he would do the same thing to them that he does to his niece.
Oh, yes.
And that he did to his mother. If you notice, he's only mentioned his mother once or twice because his mother never really spoke highly of him. So only people who capitulate to his will and his desires gets his support, not his affection, not his love, but gets his support as long as they are doing what it is that he wants to do. I'm saddened that there are 77 million people who believe, and I'm not sure what that number is now. I'm sure that number may have dissipated a little bit, but I hope exactly that they now are fully aware of the mistake and the bad decision that they made to choose this rather than choosing Kamala Harris. And even some Black men and some people who were Democrats that somehow could not get past their emotions, They couldn't get past their emotions and to really think about how this would impact the country and how this would impact the world. It really has opened my eyes that intelligence and political astuteness are not synonymous.
No, they're not.
They're not synonymous.
No.
Because there are people who I know that are very intelligent, very, very bright. But through this process, I have learned that they have not really understood or grasped or studied the political process, that they would make decisions like they made in this past 10 years.
Well, I've seen what I see is two big groups. Is one group is the I call them they're the children whose father isn't at home, and he calls you up and he says, "Hey, I'm going to take you to the ball game. You know, be ready at noon," and you're waiting on the porch at noon, and you know it's 3 and he hasn't shown up. And that's how people feel about the Democrats. They're always like, "Oh yeah, we're going to help you." This is mostly black people. We're going to help you and do this stuff, and they never come through with anything for them. And then you have another group who is just kind of old worldish, and they're anti homosexuals, they're anti-trans. They're in that white group that thinks that they've been overlooked for minorities when they're really qualified for the job. And I'm on Facebook a lot, so I fight with these guys all the time. Not that I think I'm going to change their mind, but it gives me a chance to say some things I want to say. But they see what's going on, and they would never admit that most of his actions are self-fulfilling and racist. They like that he is what we call a strong man and will do whatever he wants until somebody puts a stop to it. And as we have seen, Congress and the Supreme Court are not that willing to put a stop to anything. Some of the federal judges are, but you know, if it goes to the Supreme Court, that's always a toss-up.
Well, it's unfortunate that it's even weaker than a toss-up going to this Supreme Court, to this Supreme Court, which I get into this discussion with people about this ideology that people fear Donald Trump, that people of the Republican Party fear Donald Trump, people of the Supreme Court fear Donald Trump. I am becoming more and more disagreeing with that position, that they don't fear Donald Trump. They agree with what he is doing, but they do not have the courage to come out to say that they believe that's their same belief. Many of them, that their same belief. I find it very difficult to believe that these people are fearful of Donald Trump. Now, with some nuances, because there are some deranged people out there that are sycophants and will do things to hurt people. So in terms of a level of security, there could be some of that. But by and large, I don't buy that these people are just politically frightened of Donald Trump so that they will go along with this, even though they don't believe in much of what he is doing.
I'm on the other side of that to a degree. So I read a lot, and I read about Germany every once in a while, because this is very similar to what was going on in Germany. So
exactly.
When the Nazis took over, they only had like 38% of what we'll call parliament. And they had to have other groups come on. So I think there was 2 different other groups who had different ideas, but they're like, okay, we'll go with you and we'll vote for Hitler to be the head. But I forgot what they called their head. Here, I think we have the same kind of thing. There are some hardcore members of Congress who are like, Donald Trump could, just like you said, he could shoot somebody in the street and I'd still be with him. And then there's this other group, and I say this about actually all elected officials, who live in fear of losing all the time. And that other group is not going to change unless the polls change. They don't really fear Donald Trump. They fear being unelected. So they are going to let him run his course and be a part of the group as long as the people at home say, okay, you keep doing it.
I can see that. I can see some level of that position. I can see some level of that position because the Republicans, in terms of the electorate, they only make up about 40% of the national electorate, right? They only make up about 40% of the total electorate. So, and while he still has, I think I saw a recent poll that says that he has about 80% of support within the Republican electorate. So yes, people who are Republican in Congress, they have to take that into account. But that speaks also of the character of these people. If you are only concerned about your political existence, if you're only concerned about your political existence and you're not concerned about the country at large, or even the constituents at large, and really it's the country because you vote on policies that impact the country.
Everybody.
If that is not at the very forefront of your being, then your character, your conscience, and your courage, then we don't really have people who care about the country in those representative positions.
Well, when I was in Springfield, things that were, it reached that point where the Democrats and Republicans rarely talked to each other, just a little bit, and the divide was getting bigger. And I would say, no, there's a lot of elected officials. I was there for 9 years. I'd say there's a lot of elected officials whose thought is, I am not going to be on the wrong side. You will not see me on the side where somebody can point at me and say, look, he didn't stick with us, or he was against this big thing, so we're knocking him out. For one thing, we've seen people say, I don't want to be with you anymore, at least on this. And, the next election, they're gone. So, like I say, fear runs rapid among elected officials.
So then that basically sustains my position, is that their greatest concern is their political sustainability, and that they are willing to sacrifice the greater good for their own sustainability.
Yes. I mean, look at all those people who are in Trump's cabinet. Who is it? Rubio. Is Ted Cruz in his cabinet? And all those guys, he's not. Well, either way,
he's not in the cabinet.
There's a few more. J.D. Vance. They all talked about Trump like a dog until he picked Vance to be the vice presidential candidate, and he won, and he started putting people places.
J.D. Vance called him the modern day Hitler.
Yes, and now look at him. Now look at him. He's doing a Nazi salute. So yeah, he's like, well, this is the side I'm on now. It's a shame.
Well, I try to avoid getting into the name calling and that sort of thing, and to try to help us to really focus on what is really important and to really understand that this person is a threat and a danger to everybody. He does
Yes.
not mean anybody any good. And it is hard for me to fathom why people, even through your frustration, that if you really care about the country, you care about the community where you live, you care about people, because people, in my view, are the country. That's the country, not the brick and mortar, but
No.
it's the people that is a country. So if you are a person, an activist or an advocate or a public official that, or a voter who says that you care about the country, that we get into these positions or everybody is standing on their side and not willing to move because I'm not going to give in to you, right? It's like everybody is this big standoff, whether they're right or wrong, unwilling to say, why don't we sit down and have a conversation to see about devising a solution to the problem that exists for our people or for our community. But as you spend time on Facebook, going back and forth with people who, in many respects, that are just hurling out statements that are not based or rooted in any truth or facts, because there are not a lot of people who do a lot of studying like you and I spend a lot of time studying this, the history of this and the process of this, that they just throw things out there. Because I see some of the statements that people make, and I do spend time providing them with the factual information that either refutes what it is they're saying or answering the question that they may have. There is a few of them out there that just like to kind of throw things up because they're angry.
Yeah, right.
And they may be angry for good reasons. A little anger is not a bad thing, but if you're trying to do something with that anger to do something positively to improve or to bring about a solution. But if you're just going to just hurl names and insults at someone because they don't necessarily agree with your approach, how is that productive? That's the question that I would raise to anybody. That
I don't think those guys want to be productive, to be honest with you. There's some guys that I go back and forth, and they love to say things like you're a libertard or whatever the catchphrase of the right is that month. They want to basically say, without saying you're ignorant, they want to say you're ignorant, and that's why you're on that side. But here, let me tell you a quick thing. Most of the things I know are from my personal life, and I don't mind saying names. Yeah. So I'm at the county. My chief of staff, Lance Tyson, and I are working on the budget, $500 million deficit. So we're trying to fill it out, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it without hurting a lot of people and all that. Mike Quigley is on my side at this point. Forrest Claypool is working with SEIU, the union, on another budget because for some reason SEIU didn't like me. I don't know why. So Quigley is going to both sides. He comes in and he looks all sad and he falls on the couch and he says, Forrest doesn't care. And we're like, what are you talking about? And he said, Forrest doesn't care if people get hurt. He said, I looked at Forrest's budget and I said, people are going to be hurt by this budget. And Forrest said, that's okay because they're going to blame him about it. So that's how I look at a lot of politicians. They're like, it doesn't matter what happens to people if I can get in and I'll be the savior. And that's the world we live in.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the reality of the world that we live in, that every person in a public position is not there for the public. They are there for the public when it suits their position. They claim that they're there for the public.
But I should say that even though people looked at Claypool as a Democrat, he was a libertarian. And his position, without him stating it all the time, because if he had stated it, like he would have been non-gratis, nobody wouldn't be around, was that you cut the government. So his plan was just to fire a bunch of people, which is no way to run a government.
Right. There's no way to run the government is to just, cut. I always say that you can't cut your way to prosperity. You have to invest your way to prosperity. I've never made money by just cutting costs. I've been able to make money by investing in a project or investing in people. Now you have to make wise calculations and wise investments, but I have never seen where anybody has cut their way to prosperity without hurting a bunch of people. Now, if you don't care about people,
and they don't always help their bottom line when they do it,
right?
Except for now that the country has become, in the last 30 years, the only important thing is stock price, and stock prices don't actually, help people. The only people they help are the administrators, executives who get more bonuses, but the workers don't really get anything out of that unless they can afford to buy a whole bunch of stock. But unfortunately, our country has become stock driven, where before it used to be performance driven. You make a profit, share a little profit with your workers. Now it's like, no, we're going to take that profit. We're going to buy some more stock, our own stock, to make it go up higher and make us richer.
And unfortunately, a greater degree of the workforce have bought into that the stock market, which may be about 10% of the country, actually benefits from that. But the larger part of the country, by and large, if you have a 401k or something like that in your retirement, but the stock market is not the driver that talks about or that deals with the strengthening of the economy. The strengthening of the economy is the workforce.
Yes.
It's the workforce. It's the people who are buying the cars, who are buying the appliances, who are buying the homes, and who are going on vacations and going on the trips. Those are the people who drive the economy, not the stock market. Now we have, and
like you're saying, and the investment in the company itself. That absolutely. Whatever makes the company stronger.
Right. Well, when you have CEOs today that are making 500 and 600 and 700 times that of the average employee, when in 1972 or 1976, the average CEO was making 30 times that of the average worker, that we had a much more egalitarian type society than what we have today. And of course, thanks to Ronald Reaganism is what I call it, that when he decided that he was going to, not enforce the antitrust laws, and then he decided to cut the corporate tax rate from 74% at that time all the way down to, I think it was 35%, and said that we have to give the brakes to the corporations, and then it will trickle on down to the middle class. Well, it never trickled down.
No, we're still waiting.
Yeah, well, and we are hemorrhaging on the Ronald Reaganism economy or approach to the economy, where
I will say I do blame every president after him also they all have had some kind of neoliberal agenda where they either cut out regulations in businesses, or they bail them out, or shoot, like here, well, they want to give money to these billionaires like it's 40 going north. Here, take some money and you can do something with it. Here, take it. It's basically corporate welfare.
Well, absolutely. Where we give billions and billions of dollars, we still are giving billions and billions of dollars to the oil tycoons that don't need it. We are still giving some 15 or 20 billion dollars to oil companies that are seeing skyrocketing record profits. Why are we still subsidizing the oil tycoons? So you're right. Both Republican and Democratic presidents' administration have not rolled back much of those cuts that were made by Ronald Reagan. Now, Ronald Reagan was the one who absolutely took a hatchet to it.
Oh, yeah.
But you have now the one thing that goes not talked about, and I try to talk about it a lot, is the policies that were, much to my surprise, that Joe Biden, who was, I consider to be more of a conservative prior to him becoming the president of the United States, the policies that he was able to get passed through those profound 4 pieces of legislation that would have dramatically improved the quality of life for the average worker, and certainly would have improved the quality of life for millions of Black people in this country through those pieces of legislation. Now, those legislations are being ripped apart because they decided to elect what we currently have in office now, that is, impacting much of that legislation, like trying to hold back $16 billion to build the new, in New York, where he's holding up the $16 billion to build that tunnel there in New York, that if the old tunnel collapse and they don't build that new tunnel, it is going to cause problems all across the country and the world, for that matter.
No, really? Is that the Holland Tunnel?
Yes.
That's the only tunnel I actually know in New York. That's probably the only thing I know about New York.
Right. So, yeah, it's certainly that tunnel that connects New York and New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There.
No, but that is amazing that people don't understand that Joe Biden wasn't perfect. But you know why he wasn't perfect? Because he's a man. There's no man who's perfect. But that didn't mean that he wasn't trying to do some good things.
And did some good things. I mean, did some transformational things through the infrastructure bill, through the CHIPS and Science Act. I mean, our state was going to get some $16.8 billion through those bills that were passed. Now, we'll probably still get some, not nearly what it is that would have come through those bills that were passed, which is what I try to help people to understand, that you can't have a zero-sum approach to anything, especially when you're talking about public policy. You can't have the zero-sum approach, that if it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing, which is the same thing that I say to people and try to help people to understand about why I am a Democrat. I'm not an independent. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I am a Democrat because the evidence and the proof is there that our greatest gains in the last 60 years have come greatly because of Democratic policies. The Republicans do not have a record to stand on at all when it comes to putting forth public policy that has improved the quality of life for the average worker and certainly for the average Black family, period.
Well, I'll tell you, I have some people on Facebook who will disagree with you, and they'll say, "How do you think slavery was stopped?" That's how far they want to go back.
Well, I know that's a part of it, and I did some writing, and we'll go through some of that with people if they want to actually learn that if we're talking about, and of course they get caught up in the names, right? They get caught up in the names, but the Southern Democrats are your Republicans today.
Yeah,
they abandoned it.
It's regional. Yeah,
absolutely. So that if you were talking about the Republicans, then you would be talking about the Democrats of the day. That's what you would be talking about. But because they are only caught up in the nomenclature, just the titles, not the substance, it is how that they stay with it. And some people on Facebook will do that. But I, will take the time for those who are willing to listen, because I think it's important that sometimes when there may be 2 or 3 that we may be reaching, but we may share information with hundreds or thousands that will get the information that they're not aware of themselves or don't know how to go get it.
No, you're absolutely correct. That is one of the reasons why I always fight back. These guys use a lot of fallacies. I'm like, no, you're talking about the wrong thing. If you look at it that way, and your premise is, if you start off with the premise that all Black people aren't qualified, your argument will stand up. But that's not the reality. The reality, there are many qualified people. It's getting them in the door.
Absolutely.
But you said something earlier. I'm not certain if this is too far off topic, but you said something about how they were punishing Kaepernick to make a point. Yes. That is the same thing that's happening with this administration. This whole show of force with ICE and literally shooting people in the streets is to get people to back off and realize that if Donald Trump says something, it's going to happen. And if you get in the way, you may get one of these in the back of the neck.
Absolutely. You can also tie this into this whole thing with the Super Bowl. Now, I did not watch the Super Bowl. I didn't watch the halftime performance. But leading up to the Super Bowl, what we saw that happened here, if people don't want to accept the reality that racism is alive and it is well within that old group that is becoming a greater minority, but they're still trying to hang on to that power, that yes. They decided that because Bad Bunny was going to be on the halftime performance, they decided that they were not going to go or they were not going to watch, but that they were going to have their own separate halftime event. And I think I saw somewhere where there was someone videotaping wherever Donald Trump was, and he was caught, or they were caught watching the Super Bowl halftime on Jumbo. So, but that they had with Kid Rock and Turning Point USA had their own, which reminded me of the same thing that they did when schools were being integrated in the South. The whites said, no, we don't want to go to school with them. We got to have our own schools. So we're going to set up our own school. or
That's right.
that empty pool syndrome when in Texas, when it was outlawed that you could not have segregated public pools anymore. What did they do? They fill the pools with concrete so that nobody could go.
Nobody, right?
Right, so that nobody could go to the pools. So that you would still have people who look like you and I because they are dug in and don't want to acknowledge that, there is some truth to this. That people just dig in and don't want to say, I was mistaken. I was led down the path of darkness. Now, maybe they were very genuine in thinking and believing that it was going to be better. But, when reality confronts you, it doesn't make you any less of a person or any less of a man to say, I went down the wrong path. There's no ego in that. There's there's no ego in making progress.
Well, when I was in Springfield, and sometimes somebody from our side would have to talk to somebody on the other side, try to get them to vote for something they had. And what I found was there was some of the people on the other side of the aisle who like, well, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but they would never cross the line. They were like, I can see where you're coming from, but I can't help you. I know your problem. It makes sense, but I can't help you because on our side, we don't acknowledge that. They didn't say that, but they just say, I can't help you. And I assume that means we don't acknowledge that on our side of the aisle. So if I step out and do something, I will be cut off from the resources, and I don't want that to happen. And that's the political climate we're in.
That's the political climate that we're in, but somehow we've got to change that political climate. And the only way that political climate is going to change, it is going to change by us, that we have to change in terms of the voters, because the voters are going to have to put the pressure on those people who are in the public offices. Again, here in Cook County and in Chicago, where we have this vast number of registered Black voters, which in a large degree determine most of the major elections here in Cook County and in Illinois, for that matter. The governor can't be the governor without the plurality of the Black registered voters.
No.
Right?
Matter of fact, I can tell you that when Rauner was in office and he was running for a second term, their strategy was to try to get 8% of the Black vote to either not vote or to vote for Rauner up here in Cook County. And that's all they wanted. And they figured if that happened, he'd win. And of course it didn't happen.
Right. Of course. So, and if we could ever just get a swath, if we could just get a third of our registered voters, which is in Cook County, currently today, we still have about 600,000 registered in Chicago and another 130,000 that's eligible to be registered because they've aged in.
Uh-huh.
Throughout Cook County, we have just about one, close to like 1.4 or 1.5, might be a little bit higher than that. Total numbers in terms of Chicago and Cook County. Now, of course, we're never going to have what we call this one block. But if we had a third of that, just a third of it, it would have not only local implications, but it would have national implications, because we've never had an organized block of Black voters, right? That determined it. And so that is what the objective of my objective with the independent Black voting bloc is that when you function, and I try to use the example of a union. That's why unions have so much influence, is because what? They're organized together. They come together,
yes.
they discuss.
Together, they have to.
Right. They discuss what their objectives are. They have their internal process. They have their internal debate. Then they have a process of voting as to how they're going to move as one group. Now, everybody in the group doesn't agree, but they agree on the process that whatever the majority decides, that's the way that we have to go politically as a union, which gives them the kind of influence that they have. There is no union that exists in Illinois that has the number of people that we have in terms of building an independent Black united voting bloc that we could transform our communities in terms of public policy and all of those things that are connected with it. If we were to just take 1/3 of that and use and put that together to as an example, we could demonstrate that to ourselves of the power that really exists at the level of organized voters.
No, you're absolutely correct. And to go back to Harold Washington, when Harold Washington won in the Black wards, he got 96 to 98% of the vote in every ward. And even with that, when there was when Bernie Epstein ran against him, it was still a close race. So I think what that really shows us, if we don't, and all the way up until I ran, I don't know the numbers since like 2006. If the Black candidate did not get 92% of the Black vote, he wasn't going to win, he or she. They just weren't going to win. You just, white people just don't vote for you on those type of numbers.
Brandon Johnson won. Brandon Johnson had to get 80% of the Black vote in order for him to win the election. Brandon Johnson got 80% of the Black vote. Is how he was
better,
going to win.
But that's still an awful lot of the people. Yes, that's an awful lot of people from one group.
Without question. So the power of that vote, the power of that block, because it is fractionized and it is manipulated by different political factions. If we were able to bring it together, which I'm still convinced that we can find a way to do it, to bring it together so that we could demonstrate to ourselves. So while I'm a Democrat, I don't believe that the Democratic Party should be selecting my candidates. I believe that the voters should be selecting and electing their candidates. It should not be the people who are in public office who decide to say to the voters, these are the candidates that you get to vote for. I find that to be problematic. I believe that the voters should be the deciders on selecting who the candidates are and electing who the representatives are. If we put ourselves in that position before an election took place, you would see a different engagement, certainly from the people who are in the public offices at that time. I say to people all the time that politicians and public officials do one thing well, is that they are able to count votes.
Yeah.
They're able to count votes. Now, and if we were to put together this large swath of a unified voting bloc, the phone would be ringing from public officials from the city to the county to the state, wanting to have an audience with us because they know that we now are in a position to determine their fate. That's the kind of influence, and if you want to call it a threat, that the voters should have. And if we could ever get to that point, we could demonstrate something to ourselves that would make us all shake our heads as to why did we do this a long time ago? I mean, we mobilized, right? We mobilized around certain events, like Harold Washington, for instance. We mobilized and organized around electing Harold Washington, but we didn't institutionalize that. Just think of.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because I remember my dad coming home one day, and sitting around the kitchen table, and out of the blue, he says, Harold's working on a machine so we can keep electing black people. Now, you know, soon after that, he died, so he didn't get a chance to put all the machinery in place. But look at Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta just doles out black mayors like nobody's business, and we don't have
that. They institutionalize it because between Maynard Jackson and Andy Young, right?
Yes,
they institutionalized saying to major corporations. I mean, it's in the fabric. It's in their constitution there, that if you are going to do business with the city of Atlanta, black people have to be included. Black people control 51% of the Atlanta airport there. You go to Atlanta and you will find some of the same major companies that are operating here in Chicago. You go to Atlanta and you see the same companies operating there. The difference is you see black people significantly benefiting from those jobs and the contracts because it is in their fabric. It's institutionalized there. And like your dad said, Harold Washington was building that kind of that kind of institution. Unfortunately, there, and this is my belief, there were some black people who didn't want to see a Harold Washington then, and who don't want to see a Harold Washington type since then. What I saw happen when Harold Washington died amongst the so-called black leaders was a travesty to me. It was a travesty to me. What I saw happen with Vernon Jarrett and Bobby Rush and Dorothy Tillman, what they did to Eugene Sawyer, and really what they did to the entire black community was unconscionable to me. It was unconscionable.
I call that the lack of understanding what power is and how it's obtained and how you keep it. I hate to put it this way, but they were children in the game, and they didn't have enough maturity of being an elected official, and they've never been in the room before. You know, they never been to see how things work and how you really make things. I don't think they just didn't understand that division. We didn't have any room for division. If we weren't all together, then they say if we didn't all hang together, we all hang separately. So that's what happened.
Ironically, they gave back to Daley the exact same way that Daley and Byrne created the opportunity for Harold Washington to succeed.
Yes, that is ironic. Yes,
right. They did it exactly the same way. And you would think that they would have learned. So I have never forgiven Tim Evans for his position, what he did, because keep in mind, I was relatively new in the city of Chicago at that time.
Yes.
I moved to Chicago in 1985. And by 1987, okay, I was a proud black man. I had never felt more proud as a black man. I was 27 years old, 25 years old when I moved here, but I never felt more prouder as a black man because of Harold Washington, of who he was and what he represented at that time. And I think that a lot of black people, a lot of black men would probably say the same thing. Sometimes it's a little bit inexplicable. But I remember walking down the street one day and I don't know, acting silly and working part on the sidewalk and part on the street. And one of my buddies said, "Man, you better get out of that street and please don't come." I said, "Look, Harold Washington runs this. I can, I can do." So you felt that kind of confidence. But what I saw happen when Harold Washington died, and what I saw them doing to Eugene Sawyer. Now, keep in mind, I had no idea who Eugene Sawyer was, but I did some research, and there was a fireman who helped me to understand. He was a lieutenant on the fire department. His name was Captain Gamble. He lived at 76 in Wabash. And this was one of the most politically astute.
Oh, he lived in the 6th Ward.
Yeah. He was one of the most politically astute people that I know. He would literally bring me into his home, and he had newspapers all around his house from years and years back. And he would go and he would pull stories. He knew about, Claude Holder or what's his name? Was it Claude Holder? Who was?
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, who was the alderman prior to Tim Evans? They called him the step-and-fetcher of the city council.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but yeah, there were the aldermen. They called them the Silent Six because they voted with the party.
Right. Well, so this is a person who just. I used to go to his house and he would educate me on the political landscape of Chicago. And I'm gonna think of that guy's name, but anyway, so when Harold Washington died, and then it became the special election, Tim Evans was the chair of finance at the time. Eugene Sawyer was the mayor. And of course, Tim Evans now is launching the campaign to run against Eugene Sawyer in the primary. And Ed Daley was also gearing to run. So I'm hearing these people call Eugene Sawyer and Uncle Tom and Oreo and this and that and the other.
Well, yeah, they were terrible on him.
But that was not what I learned from Captain Gamble about who Eugene Sawyer was as an older person. Number one, he was the first black alderman to endorse Harold Washington in the primary, because there were many of the other blacks that endorsed him after he had won the primary. They were all with Jane Byrne.
Right.
So I learned that from Captain Gamble. So I went looking for Tim Evans. I was like, somebody's got to answer to give me something to understand. Why is it that they are saying this about Eugene Sawyer? And that's not what I learned from Captain Gamble, where he showed me this in, the newspapers and all of the evidence. So I wanted some evidence of what they were saying about Eugene Sawyer. Why was this man so bad? So I went downtown. Now, keep in mind, I had only been in Chicago now. This is 1989. So I've been here about 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going downtown. I'm walking down Randolph. going towards City Hall, looking to see how I can get in contact with Tim Evans. Tim Evans walks out of the building where his campaign office was, right there on Randolph and Dearborn. He was in that office where the old building, you know, where the McDonald's used to be on the corner?
Yes.
Well, his campaign headquarters was in that building, and he had walked out. And I saw him, and I said to him, I said, Mr. Evans, can I talk to you? You know how he has that big smile on his face, right? So I asked him, and I said to him, I wanted to ask you a question. I wanted to ask you, why are you all saying what you're saying about Mayor Sawyer? And of course, he's smiling and he's asking me, he's like, well, am I going to have your support? I said, no. I said, I'm asking you a question. I need to understand, why is it, if you can point me to something, point me to some evidence of what it is that you all are accusing Mayor Sawyer of being. Because what I'm learning by documentation is very different than what you all are saying. He could not point me to a news article that demonstrated what they were accusing Eugene Sawyer of. Not a news article. Dorothy Tillman couldn't do it. Vernon Jarrett. It was just appalling to me that Vernon Jarrett, who was a journalist, taking the position that he took, calling Mayor Sawyer an Uncle Tom. And I said, you know, they must not have read Uncle Tom's Cabin. Because I read Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Uncle Tom was, you know, he was not the Uncle Tom that they were pointing to.
Right. Uncle Tom was helping all the other slaves, right?
Yeah, Uncle Tom was helping. He was, you know, he was sacrificing and risking his own life to help others. So, so I was very distraught, and I have had a problem with Vernon Jarrett ever since. I know that he's deceased, and I know that people like to say, well, you know, how could you speak poorly of a dead person? I'm not speaking poorly of the dead person. I'm speaking poorly of the person who was alive at the time.
He was alive when this happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not speaking about him in death. I'm speaking about him when he was living. So,
well, you know, I heard David Orr on WVON, and that's probably been about 15 years ago at least, because he was talking to Matt McGill, and they were talking about Harold Washington, and Matt, I don't know who brought up Mayor Sawyer, because Matt is married to a Sawyer, and David Orr didn't know this, obviously, because he started talking about Sawyer badly, and Matt's like, whoa, stop that. The independent Democrats at that time, if you weren't in their camp, then they treated you like you had cut the throat of one of their children. My dad got the same kind of treatment. Matter of fact, he was going to run for county board president. George Zund stepped down. They're at the Democratic committee meeting, the black caucuses, and my dad says, I want to run. I'm the finance chairman. I want to run for this, and I'm asking for your support. The caucus says, you got our support, John. They go out. They take the vote. All the black people voted for David Orr. I know my dad was hurt to the bone. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But when he did win, and you know, he was as black as you could get. He was going to help all the black elected officials the best he could. Mm-hmm. Then they came around, but that was the only time. Once, you know, they got a job somewhere, then they were like, oh, yeah. Not them, but somebody in their camp. Then they were like, right. Oh, John, you're right. But I was like,
what you're really describing is what's happening with in Washington is that, these people that spoke against Trump, but all of a sudden they are
Yeah, all of a sudden they all, yes, yeah.
his greatest loyalists. But now, what year was it? I can't remember. What year was it that your dad became the Cook County Board president?
94.
1994.
So, yeah, so George Dunn was the president from 70 to 90, and then Richard Phelan was the president from 90 to 94.
Okay.
And Phelan ran for governor.
Yeah. Now, was George Dunn was he in the 42nd Ward Democratic with Bert Nateras?
George Dunn was the leader. He was the Democratic committeeman.
Right.
And Nateras was his alderman.
Right. So Bert Nateras was my alderman when I first moved to Chicago, because I lived at 1120 North LaSalle when I first moved here. So my then pastor, who is Marvin Alexander, who is the pastor of Union Missionary Baptist Church. I think he's been there now some 50 years, maybe more. He introduced me, right? He introduced me to Bert Nateras, George Dunn, because when I left my company that I was working for, I decided I wanted to stay in Chicago, but I didn't want to go and work another job. But I wanted to stay in Chicago. I'd fallen in love with Chicago. So he introduced me to Bert Nateras. Bert Nateras introduced me to George Dunn, introduced me to Rostenkowski, because Rostenkowski was the congressman at the time. Yes. So they had a pretty influential political campaign there. And my state representative at the time was
Jesse White.
Jesse White was my state representative at the time. So so I had the opportunity to meet some of the I guess you would call them the heavyweights at that time.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, listen. Now I I'm going to do our Black History moment towards the end of the broadcast, but I want to talk about something that is extraordinarily important, that we can make history now, and I'm going to announce it here, the support that we have. There's a young man by the name of Kevin Jackson, who was charged of first-degree murder in 2001, convicted, and served 23 years, 8 months in prison. Went before 16 different courts trying to appeal his conviction. Almost died in prison because of an illness that he did not get medical treatment for. The court assigned him some attorneys to represent him on getting the medical treatment that he needed. And when they heard about his case and started learning about his case, they took on his case to help him to win his appeal. He ultimately went before the appellate court. The appellate court at the time, and Justice Mikva at the time, said that this was one of the most extraordinary cases that had ever come before her. That this was a case, at best, the evidence that they had was shaky, at best, and that this case should never have come before the court, and admonished the lower court for abusing its power. Police officers threatened witnesses, had witnesses to sign statements, lied about their polygraph test, saying that they failed their polygraph test. one of the investigative detectives was married to one of the then assistant state's attorneys that prosecuted the case. And the appellate court ordered Kevin Jackson released from prison immediately before they had even issued their written opinion. One of my committee members of 10 by 10 to Win came to us and brought this issue to us and said that we need to listen to his story. And he came before the committee with his attorney, explained to us their situation. I read the opinion, read several of the filings and the briefings, and to my utter shock, that here was a person who had nothing to do with the crime, wasn't even there, was asleep in bed, and was picked up 2 weeks later because he was the co-owner of a car that happened to be in the gas station at the time getting gas that had nothing to do with it. And even one of the victims that was shot said that that's not the man who shot me. That's not the person who shot me. And so he was ultimately exonerated by the court. Now, fast forwarding, we voted as a committee that we are going to support him in his effort to get his certificate of innocence. Now, he's been trying to get his certificate of innocence, I think now for 6 or 7 years. In the law, in the Illinois state statute, which is 735, the civil procedure of the petition for certificate of innocence, that a petitioner was innocent of all offenses for which he or she was incarcerated. I have the legislation. We went to his hearing that was 3 weeks ago, and he has one that's coming up on the 13th of February. We're asking for everybody to show up there who can on February the 13th at 9 o'clock at the Layton County Courthouse, Criminal Courthouse, 2650 South California. Meet us there at 9 o'clock on February the 13th. We want to fill the hall there in support of Kevin Jackson. Todd, in the statute, where the statute says that any person convicted and subsequently imprisoned for one or more felonies by the state of Illinois, which he or she did not commit, may, under the conditions hereafter provided, file a petition for certificate of innocence in the circuit court of the county in which that person was convicted. The petition shall request a certificate of innocence, finding that the petitioner was innocent of all offenses for which he or she was incarcerated of. He was exonerated by the court. In the statute, it contradicts itself. In the statute, that now you've been exonerated. Now, of course, when you are charged of a crime, the state has the burden of proving that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, somehow they were able to get a conviction through a jury, through all of this made up evidence. And of course, the court reversed that decision and exonerated him of that crime. The state is not going to bring charges or to retry him, right? And they're not going to retry him because there is no evidence that points him or puts him anywhere near that crime because he was not there, was not involved. So the next step is to give him his certificate of innocence.
We talked about this at the Frogs Club meeting Saturday. I thought from the discussion that the state's attorney was pushing back on this.
The state's attorney hired a private firm out of Oak. What is it?
Oak Brook, Oak Lawn.
Oak Brook. Okay. Yeah, out of Oak Brook. They've hired this special prosecutor out of Oak Brook at the cost of $1 million a year to block his certificate of innocence. Now he's going to eventually get the certificate of innocence. In the law, it says that the petitioner, in order to obtain their certificate of innocence, the petitioner must prove by the preponderance of evidence that they are not guilty of this offense. That is a contradiction of the law, and certainly in his case, that burden has already been met because, number one, there is no evidence that connects him with this crime at all. Number two, the appellate court exonerated him and ordered him released from prison immediately because of the activity that was engaged in by the police, and certainly that was held by the state's attorney. He was not there on the scene, had nothing to do with it. His fingerprints were nowhere near that location. Somehow, mysteriously, the video footage of the surveillance camera somehow mysteriously disappeared.
Right.
The police, somehow it disappeared. So in this case, now in some cases, it is understood that because the state can bring charges back, or the decision was reversed because the state or the court erred in some ruling that the judge made in terms of that, and so that person was able to get that decision reversed. But technically, you are innocent if they threw it out. Technically, until such time that the state retries you and a jury finds you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So technically, you're innocent. So when I heard the special prosecutor in that hearing say to the judge that they were objecting to the certificate of innocence because he has the responsibility of proving by the preponderance of the evidence, which simply means that he just has to tip the scale, that he is innocent of this crime. When I heard that, my antennas went straight through the roof, that I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So when his lawyers came out, I asked him, I said, help me to make sure that I heard what I heard. Did I hear the special prosecutor say that they are objecting to him receiving his certificate of innocence, although he's been exonerated by the appellate court? And the state is not going to retry this case, that he now has to prove that he is innocent? And the attorney said to me, yes, it's in the statute. He has to prove that he is innocent. I said, well, that statute needs to be amended. The statute needs to change.
Right.
So, of course, I went home and I pulled the statute and I read it, and clear enough, it's right there in the middle of the statute, but it contradicts itself. So we got in contact with LaShawn Ford. I got in contact with LaShawn Ford and said to him, look, this is what the Illinois state statute says. Would you be willing? Now, I reached out to LG Sims. LG Sims never returned my phone call. LG Sims lives right next door to me. wouldn't even return my call.
Should have knocked on the door. No, take that back. I know LJ. I don't want him talking to me about that.
Yeah. So I reached out to, I call everybody to account, right? Because I think that it's important so I reached out to LaShawn Ford, and of course LaShawn Ford is running for Danny Davis's seat in Congress. I reached out to him, but LaShawn Ford has always made himself available even before that. And so I don't want for people to think that he's doing this just because he's running for public office. LaShawn Ford has always made himself available. Yeah. Didn't always agree, but always made himself available to listen. And so we talked with him, and I shared this with him, and he couldn't believe it. You're talking about a person who is a state legislator. He couldn't believe that this was important. And so he has agreed that he will support this measure by getting this statute amended, because here we are in Illinois, the capital of wrongful convictions, mostly of Black men. Oh, yeah. More than 574 wrongful conviction cases to date in Illinois. And as you pointed out the last time we had this conversation, more than 51% of all of the exonerations are Black men. And here we are, that he is being held from getting his certificate of innocence, right? Because we know why that is because once he gets his certificate of innocence, that changes his ability to be compensated through his recovery, through his lawsuit, which means that he would get somewhere between $4 and $6 million for every year that he was wrongfully incarcerated, which in my view is not even enough for what he had to endure during that time. I couldn't even imagine what it is that he had to endure. Plus the fact he almost died from an illness that they would not even get him medical treatment for. So we are going to be holding a press conference sometime within the next 2 weeks that LaShawn Ford has agreed to support this measure, and we're hoping that there will be other legislators, both in the House and in the Senate, that would amend this legislation that would allow for these people who have been exonerated to get their certificate of innocence. There is another young man by the name of Johnny Savory, who was taken out of his grammar school classroom at the age of 14, convicted of a murder, served more than 30 plus years in prison, only to be found that he had nothing to do with it. Wow. He has been waiting to get his certificate of innocence now for more than 10 years. When I was at Rainbow Push working with them, more than 10 years, he has been waiting, and they have been blocking his certificate of innocence for more than 10 years. This is unconscionable. This is absolutely unconscionable, and the law needs to be changed. And so we 10 by 10 to win, and we're hoping that other organizations and other community people and other voters will get behind this to support LaShawn Ford and other legislators in putting the pressure on the General Assembly to change this law. Now, I want to ask you, because I've never been an elected official, and I know that there is a process, but I also know that we have seen where the legislature, whether it be at the General Assembly or whether it be at the City Council or whether it be at some other level, when they want to change policy, that they're able to act in with alacrity in getting that policy changed. I'm asking you if you can answer this question with reality at the General Assembly to find that this policy should be amended and that it needs to be amended to allow for men who are innocent, that they should not have to go and double prove that they are innocent, that they should be able to receive their certificate of innocence. How quickly could it, not will it, but how quickly could this happen through the General Assembly?
Oh, well, you know, it could happen this session. So where are we, in February? So now people are putting in bills, and they will go before the committee. So LaShawn Ford would put in the bill amended. Probably, I'm guessing it would just strike that language, that second part that you read. It would just strike that, and it would just be everything else that's already there. And it would go to the Judiciary Committee, and about what I think. So, and let's see, there's a second reading. So, yeah, if he can get the votes in the committee now, you know, it could pass out of the committee, and I think and then somewhere in mid-March, it would come to the floor and they'd vote on it. And of course, at this, what he would be doing is, besides checking on his Democratic counterparts, because, you know, they're going to have a majority in every committee, and it'll be a sizable majority because there's so few Republicans, right? So all he needs is a majority to get it out. Then he take a roll call, you know, go around and ask people who can vote for this, make sure he's got 60 votes, and it can get out. I'm pretty sure they do that in March. They do like a week or two of just passing bills over to the Senate, and then the whole process happens again in the Senate. If whoever picks it up, so like even like LG Sims could pick it up in the Senate because it's got to pass both houses, and if they can do that, it goes to the governor, and then the governor either signs it or he doesn't, and if he signs it, he can sign it immediately. It depends on what kind of pressure people put on him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or like some things he could wait and he could not sign it at all and just be like, I'm not against it, but I'm just gonna let it happen. And I think that takes 60 days. So we probably was June, July. So it's the end of June. So July, August. So if that happens, I think at September it just becomes law. So
wait a minute. So you're saying that if the governor says that he's not against it and the governor says that he's not going to sign it, but he's not going to oppose it, that it, right, after a certain period of time, it just becomes law?
It just becomes law. Yeah. So
as long as they get 60 votes, that
right. You just got to get it out of the House, 60 votes in the House, and get it out of the Senate. And the Senate, you need 30 votes. Now, so you know they have super majorities in both sides. I don't know the true numbers, but I want to say there's like, at this point, there's like 73 Democrats in the House, and a super majority in the Senate too. But I don't know what their number is. So there's a lot of Democrats who could vote for this. You just got to get them on your side. And a lot of them are very liberal leaning. So they're progressives.
Yeah. Well, you know, this and I've been, because I understand how, you know, this whole political process works, and people make decisions not based on practicality and that sort of thing.
Right.
But certainly I've been just throwing it around in my head is, why would anybody oppose this? Why would anybody, Republican or Democrat, why would they oppose amending this policy that giving a person its full restoration of their rights and constitutional rights to citizenship. Why would anybody oppose this?
No, I'm with you because they will be. They're still free. There's just some things they would not be able to do without that. But they're still going to be out in the streets. So I don't see why anyone would oppose it. But you know how it is. There are some people who are like, well, you know, if the state's attorney thought he did something, he probably did something. If he didn't do this, he did something. You know how people can be when it comes to black men. So
of course. Well, but in this case, this case, and sure that there are other cases where they screwed up in court, and maybe that person is responsible, but you still have to do it right. You have to try them right, and you have to follow the law in order to get a conviction. And maybe that person might be responsible. In this case, this person is unequivocally not responsible for this event, this offense. They were not there. They did not do it. The person who was one of the survivors said that that's not the person who shot me. I know the person.
They would have him come down and be a witness at the committee meetings and say pretty much what you just said. You know, it's always harder to do bad things to people when they're in your face. Mm-hmm. So, and they probably could get a lot of people to be excited about changing that law too. I don't know how much action they can get in a short time, but I've seen a lot of people will come down when it comes to court and changing the law to give people, you know, like second chances and all that stuff. There's a lot of groups who are involved in that activity. LaShawn could probably get a pretty good crowd to come out and support and speak on behalf of changing that.
Yeah, well, you know, we certainly should be doing this, and I know that there are people who take the attitude that of what you just said. Well, then if he didn't do it, why did they pick him up? Well, ask 574 other people who were wrongfully convicted.
You're right. Yeah, that's a big number.
Question. Right, we are the capital of the country, and I want for people to understand that we are the capital of the country of wrongful convictions. We paid out more than $1.5 billion in claims and settlements to police misconduct in the city of Chicago, more than any other city in the United States of America. So we do have a problem, not only with the police department, but there's also a problem with the process within the state's attorney's office. And now that we have a different state's attorney, the predecessor the person after Kim Foxx, who is, in my view, taking the Donald Trump extremist approach, even though she claims she is a Democrat. I don't, I question that, but she
I'm in your camp. I think that in some ways she was like the stalking horse for like the people who were behind Paul Walllace, trying to see if they could win something. If they could win that, maybe they could win the mayor's next time.
Exactly. And so, that's, in my view, that's the strategy. If they can infiltrate Chicago politics, if the right can infiltrate Chicago politics, they can flip Illinois to becoming a red state. And so she has gone to the absolute extreme. The first thing that she did when she got sworn in was to drop the charges on the police officer who beat the Iranian kid in the middle of the street in the broad daylight on
I saw
video.
that. Right.
Right. Drop the charges there. The second thing that she did was to empower the Chicago police using a pilot program to give the police more powers to charge people with felony gun charges without any review. That was the second thing she did. Now, what was reprehensible about that is that she did that without talking to any of the public defender's office. She did that without talking to any of the district councils in the districts that she even started the pilot program in the 7th district and in the 5th district, which was Inglewood and
Roseland.
And Roseland. And then she now has expanded it to go citywide, which doesn't mean anything because it's only going to be enforced in Black communities.
Yeah, right.
Right. So, and then what's sad is that the superintendent of police, Larry Snellen, went along with this unilateral decision without having any type of conversation about this and discussion and debate around this issue. So we have, and then they say to us, we want you all to trust us because we're not going to send anybody to jail that doesn't deserve it. And of course,
because we have a great history, right?
right. And that's what I said when in the meeting. I said, well, you know, we would like to trust our police department, and there are those of us who support having a great police department. But unfortunately, the Chicago Police Department has a history of not being able to be trusted. So you've got a lot of work to do there rather than just telling us to trust you, because we can't just trust you. The evidence shows otherwise. But it was, to me, it was one of those very shameful things that here Larry Snellen, a Black man who went along with this decision without there being any type of discussion whatsoever. Period.
That's a pretty big policy change. It is. You would think that it would have been out in the public for a while with people talking about it before they just say, "Okay, this is what we're doing. We don't care."
Right.
What you think?
Right.
Basically.
Well, and now we learn that more than 1/3 of these cases, have been thrown out by the court. So they got to the bench and they've been thrown out because they should never have made the light of day. So now you have over 1/3 of these people that have to go and spend money, time with lawyers, trying to expunge their records of something that they should never have been charged with in the first place.
1/3 is a large number, very large.
Very large number, very large number. Well, at the time that we had the town hall back in the spring, they had 46 cases. And of the 46 cases, 16 of that 46, which represents 35% of them, got thrown out by the court. So, yeah. So this is where we are. All right. So what I am saying, how you can be a difference maker in this, is that I want for each of you to contact your state representative, your state senator, and tell them that you want for them to support amending the certificate of innocence, that a person who is found to be innocent, reversed by the court, that they should automatically receive their certificate of innocence once they petition the court, that they should not have to go and prove again that they are innocent. How is it that a person proves that they are innocent when the court has already said that that person is not responsible?
Yes. Unnecessary roadblock. That's all it is.
Absolutely. An unnecessary roadblock. Now, if they want to try to mitigate from the state or these municipalities having to having to pay out these large sums, then they need to do a better job of making sure that they get it right on the front end. Not that
that would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah, on the front end. So if you want to avoid lawsuits or the taxpayers being on the hook for millions and millions of dollars, or a person being incarcerated for 3 decades of their life, then get it right on the front end. Yes. Because as a lawyer, you do not swear to an oath to win cases. You swear to an oath to seek justice. That's what you swear an oath to. And a justice does not mean that you are to get a victory at all costs, and certainly at the cost of someone else's constitutional protections.
Yeah, that's why I never was a big fan of the prosecutors, because yeah, winning seemed to be the only thing they cared about, and that's, winning doesn't mean that you were right. That just means you won. Yeah. Hey, you got enough time you got enough time for your history moment? I don't want to.
All right, Leah. Let me do our Black History moment. All right. So on this date, February 9th, 1995, Dr. Bernard Harris Jr. made history as the first African American to walk in space during a joint Russian-American mission. Additionally, Alice Walker, acclaimed author of The Color Purple, was born on this date, 1944. 1944 Arthur activist Alice Walker was born in Eatonton, Georgia. And in 1995, during the same mission, the Space Shuttle Discovery achieved the first rendezvous with Russia space station in Mir. That is your Black History moment and reflections for this day, February 9th in 1944, 1995. There were some other things that happened in 1960. Greensboro, 4 sit-ins began in 1960, February 9th, 1960. Some other dates we're going to come up with next week for our Black History moment. So that is our Black History moment. All right, Todd.
I read The Color Purple, and it was excellent, and I'll never read it again. It was so depressing. But it evoked emotion out of me. That's how I know it was good.
Yeah. Did you watch the movie Django Unchained?
I did.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was well done, and it was like, I read a lot of comic books in my life, so it was like a comic book in a way, but all the acting was done. I just think Tarantino seems to know what he's doing. So I liked it.
It was one of the more colorful expletives of slavery, right?
Yes.
That was, he did it in its rawness of slavery. Now, I know that it was some white folks acting, but I did cringe every time I heard them say the N-word.
Yeah.
Comfortably. Now, but I also label the character Stephen, which was played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
Well, I assigned that character to Tim Scott, and I was like, wow, we learned of Stephen even before.
The interesting thing about Stephen and Samuel Jackson kind of stated this is that Stephen was the smartest man on the plantation. He was smarter than the owner and everybody. He just was evil. Yeah.
Well, that's usually, but you know what? That's usually the case. That's usually the case that the Black people were smarter than their captors, right? We've invented, our people invented all these things, and that they have never received any credit or money for. That is certainly part of it. He just was an evil, enslaved person.
But before we go, I'll have to say my favorite film by Tarantino is The Hateful Eight. Did you see that?
The Hateful Eight. I did see that. I just recently saw that. Let me say goodbye. Listen, thank you all for listening to the People Show on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio. We're going to just go on for a few minutes longer here. You can continue to watch the program on YouTube and on Facebook. Go ahead, Todd. The Hateful Eight?
I really enjoyed the Hateful Eight. Samuel Jackson, again, was the smartest guy in the room, you know.
Yeah.
And it really hit racism and how it's portrayed and how people think of Black people. It's deep once you really break the film down.
Yeah, my wife and I watched The Hateful Eight. It must have just been about maybe 2 or 3 months ago that we watched it over the holidays. The Hateful Eight. It was quite a film. It reminded me, even though it was very different, it did remind me of Django Unchained because different that these people turned on each other, right? It's kind of like what's that series called, Survivor or something?
Oh yeah, Survivor. That's the one. Yeah.
Right. So that they all turned on each other. So I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again because I think I fell asleep on some parts of it.
The young lady whose name I forgot, she's got 3 names, the white lady. She was excellent in that film. She was as mean and ugly as you can get. Everyone was themselves in that. They were like, "Whoa, you're really that character."
Yeah. I forget her name, but yes, she was. She was really something, and she could take a beating too.
Yeah, she could. Yeah.
She wasn't going to be quiet. She wasn't going quietly.
No, she did not go quietly. She let you know. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen.
Really interesting was when Samuel Jackson, when Kurt Russell was upset, John was upset because of the Lincoln letter wasn't true, and Samuel Jackson said that letter got me on the carriage. That letter disarms white people, and that's why I use it.
Yeah. Wasn't that letter used a few times
in the movie?
Yes.
So they knew when he was standing there and he said who he was, they recognized Kurt Russell's character recognized him and knew that he had the letter. So he mentioned it. And then when they got in the what's her name's place, the letter comes up again because everyone, and even Chris Mannix at the end, he wanted to see the letter, even though he knew it wasn't true. He just wanted to read it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're going to make me go back and to do that. All right. So I just want to remind everybody again, call your state representative, call your state senator, and tell them to get on board with amending the Illinois statute of 735, the petition for the certificate of innocence that says that an innocent person has to prove that they're innocent. We want to amend that bill and amend it immediately, as soon as possible. And of course, this is around where we know of Kevin Jackson. Now, the one thing I do want to say is that I do understand that there are cases that this does not apply. It does not apply. It does not apply to people where decisions have been reversed based on a technicality. But that the state is going to retry them. The state just lost because they didn't get it right. Not that the person was actually innocent, but that they didn't get it right. So We're not talking about those cases. We're talking about cases where people are innocent and they should not have to prove a second time that they are innocent. And those people should be able to get their certificate of innocence. Or those people who have been exonerated should not have to wait 10 years. They shouldn't have to wait 10 minutes to get their certificate.
That's right. Not even 10 minutes.
Right.
No.
So just because the state or the municipalities want to try to run the clock out and not compensate these people for being wrongfully convicted. Can you imagine, Todd? Can you imagine being in prison for 30 years of your life for something you had nothing to do with?
Like we said the first time, I can't imagine being in prison for a day. I can't imagine being in prison for 5 minutes. But the mental pain of being in prison and being innocent, that's got to be awful. I mean, that's probably as bad as going to war and seeing somebody get shot next to you or something.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing that we don't know, how many people have died? How many people have died in prison because they you know, and we're innocent. We're innocent, but they ended up dying in prison for a crime that they didn't have anything to do with. I played a clip.
Well, it's obvious there are people with these kind of numbers you're talking.
Yeah, there was a man in Texas who I saw this story, and I'm gonna play this clip. And this was a story about a man in Texas that was his son. He was exonerated some 70 years after he was executed in Texas.
Texas man has just been exonerated more than 70 years after he was executed for a crime he did not commit. Officials in Dallas now acknowledge that Tommy Lee Walker was wrongly convicted at age 19 for the murder of a white woman in Dallas. They say one of the officers involved in the case was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Police also suppressed evidence. Walker's son, just 2 years old when his father was executed, fought for decades to prove his father's innocence and had this message in court.
Love everybody. In spite of what happened to my father, I still love people.
The decision brought many in the courtroom to tears, including the district attorney.
No, that's pretty much sadder than that.
It doesn't, right? Doesn't. Also, what I didn't play, of course, did you see the clip? By the way, did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yes, I did watch the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And I'll tell you about the halftime. So for the halftime show, what Bad Bunny did, because from what I read, it wasn't like his normal shows. What he did was kind of just do I would kind of say it's like a history of Puerto Rico. So he's walking through, and he starts out walking through these fields where people are cutting down probably sugarcane, I guess. And it's really a tribute to Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. And there's some famous people there. Some of these people I don't even think are Puerto Ricans. I think they may be something else, you know, like Mexican but they were famous and they're in there. And I thought it was well done. And let me be honest, this is not the first time I've heard music I can't understand. So.
Yeah, you know, that seemed to be the reoccurring theme. But
I blame myself. I should have learned Spanish a long time ago, to be honest with you.
Can we get a photo? Let's get a photo right here, gentlemen. Beautiful. Awesome. Awesome.
The halftime performance was, even though I don't speak Spanish, I know a few words. It was positive. It was a positive message about Puerto Rico and being Puerto Rican. And yeah, I thought it was, I usually don't even watch a halftime show, but I decided I was going to watch it because he'd gotten so much pushback, and I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, I think that what I saw on the news, I watched it on the news this morning, that of course the Trump and the MAGA group, right? They're all freaking out, and Trump thought that Bad Bunny was going to come out and have all this, that was targeting Donald Trump, and in fact they didn't. They just had a kind of a party atmosphere that talked about all the different Americas, right? All and then talked about how great America was, and then had this big billboard that says the only thing that can neutralize hate is love, or something like that. I forget the message, but not only he didn't politicize the halftime show, and even though again I didn't watch the game, but I was glad that he didn't make it about Trump, right? That he didn't make it about Trump, because that's what people may have expected, but that he did something but sent a positive message to the rest of the country and to the world that
yes,
there's much more positivity when we turn to each other rather than turning on each other. Basically,
on each other. Yeah, that's exactly right.
What that is. But the Olympians certainly sent a message. And here is one of the Olympic athletes of what they're saying. And the caption was that MAGA is freaking out because the people at the Olympics are even speaking out.
It's definitely a tough time in our country right now, and I think I just continue to represent my values, which is compassion and respect and love for others, and also to represent my community at home and those that have given us the opportunities to be here. It's a very special experience.
And people get highly upset. I've seen some stuff on Facebook. People get highly upset when athletes speak out for love. Like no, we need to be divided. No, it's crazy stuff.
Or speak out for people to just be decent.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I am, the idea that we are the United States of America, of a free people, right? That the Constitution protects our right to free speech, our right to demonstrate, our right to protest, but that people will actually be upset with people because they speak out. To suggest that you cannot speak out unless we say that you can.
Well, that is a right-wing tactic even before Donald Trump. Donald Trump has just moved it up a notch with this. They're paying people to go out and protest. They don't need to pay people to go out and protest. I'm thinking of going out and going to the next march. I was thinking about telling my son, but he goes out his own times, and I don't want him out with me just in case something happens.
Well, it's funny that you would say that. Is that in a large degree, there's questions that's asking that I think it was Bill Maher or somebody said, have you noticed how white these protests are?
Yeah.
And Black people have decided that while we support what they're doing, we're just not going to be on the front line of what they're doing, because you have somebody who has basically said, now you said it earlier, Donald Trump says, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they will still vote for me. Well, it's essentially happening. He's actually shooting people. He's just not, he doesn't have a gun in his hand, but
Exactly.
his people are shooting people and he's still being supported. So
Yes,
essentially,
and then he says, well, they must have deserved it then.
right.
Yeah.
So while I've been asked that question by some of my committee members, is that shouldn't we be joining these protests? I said, well, we are supporting the protests, but we're just not supporting the protests by being on the front line. Why? Because Black people are the largest voting bloc that did what it was supposed to do on November the 4th or 5th of 2024. Black people, men and women, voted against Trump. That's what Black people did. And we tried to encourage the rest of the country to do the same. And 53% of white women, 39% of Hispanic men, and 87% of white men thought that this was better. They are responsible. They are responsible for largely being on the front lines. We support them and we'll be there. I chip in $5 here and there, or $10 here and there when they're asking for money at Indivisible and organizing these No Kings Day. You know, I'll chip in some money, as well as I think that we should do. But I don't think that Black people have the responsibility to be on the front line to fix this, as Black people has been on the front line, saving this country from itself time and time and time again. This is one of those things that should be led by the white community. We support them, absolutely support them, but I don't believe that it is our obligation to be on the front lines.
It's not our obligation. I will agree with that. But I've always thought that if any of the walls fall, we're just the next group that's going to get it. I mean, we're as we say, we're an easy target. So right now they're targeting Hispanics, but eventually they're going to start targeting Haitians and Dominicans and people who look like us. So
they're already targeting Haitians, going after the Haitian community, starting over in Ohio. And then they're going to go from Ohio to Miami. Now that Miami has elected a Democratic mayor, he is definitely going to maybe not target Miami because it's a red state and it has a red state governor there. Right. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he did not try to target the Haitians community down in Miami, because I think, unless the numbers have changed, Miami still has one of the largest Haitians populations in the country.
I would not be surprised if he doesn't target that, because it's more or less the big cities that, because that's where people of color are. So I would not be surprised if they don't pop up. But, the Supreme Court says you can stop people from the way they look. You're dressed. I'm going to stop you because you look like you might be African and you probably snuck over here.
Yeah, right. The Kavanaugh stop. All right. Okay, Tom. Well, listen, I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And, absolutely. You got to come back again. And, when things pop up, we definitely like to get your perspective on it. But certainly want to appreciate you for joining us for the program tonight.
Thank you for having me and having the show.
All right. And thank your wife for lending you to me tonight. So go share some time with her. Tell her
I'll try to kiss him. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right.
Good night.
Talk to you later. Thanks. Good night. All right, folks, that's going to do it for tonight. Edition of the People Show. We ran over a little bit. Again, I want to remind you all that you can make history. We can make new Black history. And we want to get this law changed in Springfield. LaShawn Ford has already said that he is going to sponsor this amendment to this law. And certainly we are going to couch that around Kevin Jackson. Somebody asked me about showing a picture of Kevin Jackson. And I didn't want to put a picture of Kevin Jackson up without his permission, but I'm going to have him to come back on the program so that you all can get a chance to hear from him directly. If you have not heard from him, we're going to hear from him directly. But what you can do is you can meet us on February the 13th at 9 o'clock at the Layton Criminal Courthouse, which is the 26th in California, 2650 South California at 9 o'clock. Meet us in the lobby so that we can find out what courtroom to go in. Let us fill that hall with supporters of Kevin Johnson, calling on the court to do the right and just thing and give Kevin Johnson his certificate of innocence, to restore him to his full right of citizenship from serving 24 or 23 plus years in prison for a crime he had nothing to do with. So let us stand with Kevin Jackson. Let us stand with all those other people who have been wrongfully detained and wrongfully convicted. That's what we will be doing. February the 13th, 9 o'clock, 2650 South California. And if you want to get involved with building and organizing the Black Independent Voting Bloc, text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385 so that you can receive the Zoom meeting link. We meet every Thursday night at 6:30 by Zoom, organizing so that we can build the strongest Black independent voting bloc that has ever existed for the first time in our history, to demonstrate right here in Illinois and in Chicago what we can do to improve the conditions and the lives of people of the Black community all across its diaspora. Join me Thursday night. Hope to see you all. Thank you all for tuning in to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I look forward to seeing you right back here next week with Monroe Anderson for another edition of Monroe Monday on the Monday night edition of the People Show. Good night.